For a long time, Mortal Kombat's 1995 live-action movie set the bar as far as video game to movie adaptations go. Understood what fans wanted out of a Mortal Kombat movie. Great martial arts action.
Mortal Kombat wasn't just a movie. It was a battle to survive. Behind the fireballs, monsters, and pounding techno soundtrack were real injuries, risky decisions, and a production that nearly fell apart before it ever reached the screen. From last-minute casting changes to brutal stunts that left actors hurt, the chaos was constant. Studios doubted it. Critics expected failure. But somehow, it pushed through. In this video, we're uncovering the strange stories behind the film, including one audition so intense, it secured the role instantly. 20. Filming was a survival challenge. The fantasy world on screen looked smooth and controlled, but behind it, filming felt closer to a real endurance test. Much of Mortal Kombat was shot in remote areas of Thailand, where the heat was intense and the air felt heavy from the moment the day began. The jungle locations were beautiful, but they came with a cost. Cast and crew worked under the sun for hours, often drenched in sweat, before cameras even started rolling. Simple movements became tiring, and focus was harder to maintain as temperatures kept rising. The environment brought more than just heat. Mosquitoes were constant, swarming around lights and bodies, turning every break into a battle of its own. Even worse, sickness began to spread through the production. Food poisoning hit multiple members of the team, forcing sudden delays and leaving some too weak to continue. Days that were carefully planned had to be adjusted on the spot as people dropped out or struggled to keep going. Despite all this, the film had to move forward. Actors pushed through exhaustion, delivering fight scenes while drained. Crew members carried equipment through difficult terrain, often with little rest. What appeared on screen as effortless action was built on real strain, where every completed scene felt like a small victory. And if the jungle nearly ended the movie, what came after nearly ended the entire franchise. 19. The sequel that crashed the franchise. Success can be dangerous when it moves too fast, and that is exactly what happened after Mortal Kombat became a surprise hit. The studio saw the numbers and saw the demand, and rushed to release a sequel before the momentum faded. The production of Mortal Kombat: Annihilation began because the studio chose to focus on fast production instead of careful development. The process turned into a time-limited project, which resulted in immediate operational problems that began to appear. The biggest shocks came from the cast. The studio had to recast important parts because several main actors decided not to come back. The change was something fans could not miss. The characters who used to feel real now appeared different because they lacked connection and authenticity. The game designers treated popular fighters badly because they took some fighters away too soon, while they gave others too little time to make an impact. What used to feel like an expanding universe now appeared to have been created in a hurried and disorganized manner. The problems did not stop there. The second movie used special effects that lacked the first film's visual effects quality, while the film moved through its scenes at such a fast pace that audiences had no time to absorb its content. The film's key moments, which should have created suspense, instead produced disorderly sequences that appeared to be incomplete. The situation, which should have served as a victory celebration, instead became an urgent warning. The sequel failed to meet expectations because it demonstrated how a powerful beginning could quickly fail when faced with stress. 18. The unknown director who won big. Before Mortal Kombat, Paul W.S. Anderson was not a major name in Hollywood. He was a young director with limited recognition, known mostly for smaller projects that had not reached a wide audience. When he was chosen to lead a video game adaptation, many saw it as another risky move in a genre that had already failed before. Expectations were low, and few believed this project would stand out. Working with a budget of around $20 million, Anderson had to be creative. He leaned into practical locations, fast-paced action, and bold visual choices to make the film feel bigger than it actually was. Instead of relying on heavy effects, he focused on movement, rhythm, and energy. The fight scenes were sharp and direct, while the environments added scale without inflating costs. What could have looked small instead felt alive and intense. The result surprised everyone. The film became a box office success and proved that a video game movie could connect with audiences. More importantly, it changed Anderson's career. He went from being an unknown director to someone trusted with large-scale projects. That success opened the door to future franchises, especially in the world of game adaptations, where his style would continue to shape the genre for years. 17. The soundtrack that became bigger than the film. The audio from Mortal Kombat continued to play after the last battle had finished. Centering the track, the Immortals created Techno Syndrome, which became a powerful piece that reached everyone who listened to it. The opening shout alone became unforgettable, turning a simple title into a chant that felt powerful and alive. The music functions as more than ordinary background sound. The sound created through the music functioned to announce upcoming intense battle sequences. The film used its soundtrack to establish its distinctive character. The fight sequences created action, but their musical score provided both rhythm and emotional depth to the scenes. Fast beats pushed scenes forward, while electronic layers added a modern edge that matched the game's style. The music maintained its energetic presence outside the theater. The music appeared in clubs, arcades, and playlists to reach people who had not watched the film. The music developed into a separate entity from its original film connection. The track allows fans to experience the entire event within seconds of hearing it. The combination of fights, characters, and atmospheric elements becomes accessible through a few musical notes. The soundtrack created one of those rare occasions that enabled a movie to achieve more than its basic function. The action sequence on screen became equally memorable to the audience as the movie developed. 16. The movie that beat the video game curse. The movie industry in Hollywood during the mid-1990s showed no confidence in producing films based on video games. Previous attempts had failed to succeed, which made studios consider video game adaptations as highly uncertain ventures. The studios regarded these films as simple projects to generate quick profits, which they did not consider to be serious films. The production team for Mortal Kombat, 1995, started their work with low expectations because most people thought the film would become another failure. The actual outcome created complete astonishment among all people. The movie began with a strong opening that maintained its performance throughout the week, which brought in large audiences who visited during each following week. The project achieved approximately $122 million in global earnings at the conclusion of its theatrical run, which represented a major success for a movie that had a limited budget. The audience attended the show because they wanted to see the action and characters and experience the energetic atmosphere that replicated the game's original feel. The product delivered what the fan base requested from it. The film created a major change in how people saw it. The film demonstrated that video game adaptations can achieve success when they treat the original material with respect and deliver entertaining content. The critics maintained their different opinions about the film, but the box office results presented an unambiguous narrative. This was not just another failed attempt. It served as evidence that demonstrated the genre possessed authentic potential. Video game properties began to receive serious attention from studios after this moment, which enabled upcoming adaptations to achieve better results while appealing to broader audiences. 15. A kids' phenomenon critics couldn't slay. When Mortal Kombat 1995 hit theaters, critics were quick to tear it apart. Reviews focused on the weak dialogue, simple story, and performances that felt too loud or exaggerated. Many dismissed it as another shallow adaptation, built more on noise than substance. For them, it was easy to label and even easier to forget. On paper, it looked like a film that would fade once the hype died down. But the audience told a different story. Fans were not looking for deep drama or complex writing. They came for the fights, the characters, and the energy that matched the game they loved. The bold style, the music, and the fast action created an experience that felt fun and easy to return to. It was something people could enjoy again and again without needing to analyze every detail. That repeat value became its real strength. Once the film reached home video, it found a new life. VHS copies were played over and over, shared between friends, and quoted in everyday moments. Scenes became familiar, almost ritual-like in how often they were revisited. Over time, what critics rejected became something fans protected. The film did not just survive the backlash, it grew into a cult classic that stayed alive through pure audience support. 14. Casting was almost completely different. Casting Mortal Kombat was never a simple process. Early on, the studio looked at bigger Hollywood names to lead the film, especially for Johnny Cage. Actors like Johnny Depp and Tom Cruise were rumored or considered at different stages. Both had the charisma and star power to carry the role, and either choice would have changed the tone of the character completely. The idea was to lean into a more recognizable face, someone who could bring instant attention to the project. The same approach was applied to Raiden. The studio's dream choice was Sean Connery, who had the presence and voice to command the role of a thunder god. At the time, he was still one of the most respected figures in film. However, he turned the offer down, reportedly uninterested in committing to a long shoot in a fantasy setting. That decision forced the studio to rethink its approach and look beyond the biggest names. In the end, the roles went to actors who were far less known, but fully committed. They brought their own style, energy, and personality to each character. What started as a search for major stars turned into something different. The final cast may not have been the original plan, but over time, they became closely tied to the film's identity, proving that the right fit matters more than fame. 13. A tragedy changed the cast. Before filming began, one role had already been decided. Steve James, known for his strong screen presence and action background, was set to play Jax. It felt like a natural fit. He had the physical style and confidence that matched the character, and his casting added a sense of excitement to the early stages of production. For a film built around fighters, having someone like him in the lineup gave the project a solid foundation. But plans changed in the most unexpected way. Before cameras could roll, Steve James passed away. The news came as a shock and forced the production to stop and rethink a key part of the cast. It was not just about replacing a role. It was about losing someone who had already become part of the film's direction. The team had to move forward quickly, but the absence was clear from the start. The role of Jax was eventually recast, allowing the story to continue, but the situation left a lasting mark. Behind the scenes, it served as a reminder that real life does not pause for production schedules. While the audience saw a complete film, those involved carried the memory of what could have been. It added a quiet weight to the project, one that was never shown on screen, but remained part of its story. 12 politics forced the movie to tone down violence. Before the movie even began filming, Mortal Kombat 1995 was already carrying pressure from outside Hollywood. The video game had sparked debate because of its intense violence, and it quickly became a target in public discussions about media and its effect on younger audiences. What started as entertainment had turned into a larger issue, with politicians and parents raising concerns about what the game was showing. One of the most visible moments came through hearings led by Joe Lieberman. He openly criticized violent video games, including Mortal Kombat, and argued that they were too graphic for young players. These discussions gained attention and helped lead to the creation of a rating system for games. By the time the movie was being planned, the franchise was no longer just a brand. It had become part of a wider cultural debate. That pressure shaped the film in a major way. To avoid restrictions and reach a larger audience, the studio pushed for a PG-13 rating. This meant removing the heavy gore that defined the games. Blood, finishing moves, and extreme moments were scaled back or left out entirely. What remained was a cleaner version of the world, focused more on action than shock. It was a compromise that changed the tone, but it also helped the film reach a wider audience. 11. Casting was a global mashup. Casting in Mortal Kombat 1995 did not follow strict rules of accuracy. Instead, it focused on finding performers who could bring energy and presence to the screen. One of the clearest examples was Christopher Lambert as Raiden. The character was inspired by a Japanese thunder god, yet the role went to a French actor with a very different background. At first glance, it seemed like an unusual choice, but his calm voice and unique style gave the character a memorable identity. This approach extended across the entire cast. Fighters and ninjas were played by actors and stunt performers from different countries, each bringing their own training and style into the role. Some had martial arts backgrounds, while others relied more on acting and screen presence. Instead of matching each character to a specific origin, the film built a mix of influences that felt more about performance than precision. At the time, this was not seen as a major issue. Audiences were drawn to how the characters moved, fought, and carried themselves rather than where they came from. The goal was to make each fighter feel strong and believable within the story. That fight may have looked smooth on screen, but behind the punches, the pain was very real. 10. Reptile was added last minute. Reptile was never meant to be part of the original plan. Early versions of Mortal Kombat 1995 already had a full lineup of fights, and production moved forward without this character in mind. The story was set, the schedule was tight, and there was little room for major changes. Everything seemed locked in place until test audiences stepped in with a clear message. They wanted more action, more intensity, and another standout fight to push the film further. That feedback forced a sudden shift. The team had to act fast, building a new sequence almost from scratch. Sets were adjusted, effects were rushed, and choreography had to be learned in a short amount of time. There was no luxury of long preparation. Actors were pushed into quick rehearsals, often repeating moves until they worked on camera. The pressure was high, and the timeline was tight. But the goal was simple: deliver something exciting. What could have been a messy addition turned into one of the film's strongest moments. The reptile fight brought speed, energy, and a different visual style that stood out from the rest. It added a new layer to the action and gave the audience exactly what they asked for. In the end, A last-minute decision created a scene that many fans still remember as one of the highlights. 9. The fights were real and painful. The fights in Mortal Kombat 1995 looked sharp and controlled, but behind the scenes, they were far from safe. The production pushed for realism, which meant actors often performed their own moves instead of relying heavily on stunt doubles. That choice added intensity to every scene, but it also brought real risk. Every punch, kick, and fall carried the chance of injury, and over time, those risks became reality. Robin Shou, who played Liu Kang, took one of the hardest hits. During a fight sequence, he cracked his ribs, but continued filming through the pain. Instead of stopping production, he pushed forward, finishing the scene before fully addressing the injury. It was a decision that showed both dedication and the pressure to keep things moving. At the same time, Bridget Wilson faced her own challenge when she dislocated her shoulder. Even after the injury, she reset it and returned to filming, determined not to fall behind. Lyndon Ashby also felt the impact, walking away from scenes with serious bruises after intense fight choreography. These were not small bumps. They were the result of repeated takes, hard surfaces, and demanding movements. What the audience saw as smooth action was built on real strain, where the line between performance and pain often disappeared. 8. A title born from a typo. Before the name became iconic, the creators struggled to find something that truly fit. Early ideas for the game went through many versions, each one trying to capture the tone of martial arts, danger, and competition. Names were suggested, debated, and rejected, often sounding too generic or lacking impact. Nothing felt strong enough to represent the world they were building. The process dragged on, with no clear winner in sight. The turning point came in a simple and unexpected way. During one of these brainstorming sessions, the word combat was written down, but it was spelled with a K instead of a C. It was not planned. It was not carefully designed. It was just a small mistake on a whiteboard. Yet, when the team saw it, something clicked. The spelling looked sharper, more aggressive, and slightly different from anything else at the time. It carried a sense of identity that the other names did not have. 7. Inspired by another cult classic. The Mortal Kombat 1995 movie style developed through various influences that originated before its release. The film derives its tonal and energetic qualities from Big Trouble in Little China, which serves as a cult classic that combines martial arts with fantasy and humor in an unpredictable way. The film demonstrated how various components could unite to create a lighthearted atmosphere, which established the main path for Mortal Kombat to follow. Raiden and Shang Tsung demonstrate how this influence affects their characterization. They present a combination of magical powers with their extraordinary abilities, which allows them to use both physical strength and supernatural powers. The characters use their speech patterns, body language, and clothing to show a reality that exists beyond traditional boundaries. The work combines ancient forces with contemporary methods of storytelling through its artistic approach. The film establishes a singular tonal experience through its execution. The film seamlessly transitions between action and fantasy while maintaining a continuous flow through its humorous moments, which create a lighter tone. The movie displays its unusual energy through its two opposing forces, which create a captivating watching experience. The film maintains two different styles of presentation. The film uses various artistic traditions to create a universe which combines elements that viewers already recognize with elements that feel completely new to them. 6. Johnny Cage was based on a real star. Johnny Cage did not come from nowhere. His look, attitude, and over-the-top confidence were inspired by a real star, Jean-Claude Van Damme. At the time, Van Damme was known for his martial arts skills, flashy moves, and strong screen presence. His signature splits, his confident style, and his action roles made him the perfect model for a character who felt both skilled and self-aware. The creators saw that energy and built Johnny Cage around it. But the character was not just a copy. It also leaned into parody. Cage was designed to reflect Van Damme's image while adding a layer of humor and exaggeration. He was bold, loud, and slightly arrogant, often acting like a star even in the middle of a fight. This mix made him stand out. He felt familiar, yet different enough to become his own personality. It was a clever way to pay tribute while still creating something original. Years later, the connection came full circle. When the movie was being cast, Van Damme was offered the chance to play Johnny Cage, the character inspired by him. Instead of taking the role, he turned it down. That decision meant the part went to someone else, and the link between the star and the character remained indirect. It became a strange twist, where the inspiration never actually played the role. 5. Mortal Kombat started as a different game idea. The project that became Mortal Kombat started as another game, completely different from its final version. The first game design used Jean-Claude Van Damme as the main fighting character through his martial arts techniques and his performance as a movie actor. The developers created a game that allowed players to control a character who fought using cinematic moves that included kicks, splits, and final attacks that matched his movie performances. The discussions built interest among various parties, which created the impression that the plan would progress forward. The agreement failed to establish itself as a complete arrangement. The developers abandoned their plans for a Van Damme-based game after the negotiations reached their conclusion. The development team made a decision to continue their work instead of terminating their project. The team maintained all essential gameplay elements while they developed an entirely new game concept. The modification enabled the development of new characters who would work with the game to establish its distinct atmosphere and combat system, which would differentiate it from other fighting games released during that time period. 4. Goro was a $1 million headache. Goro was meant to be one of the most impressive parts of Mortal Kombat, 1995, but bringing him to life turned into a constant struggle. Instead of using simple effects, the production built a full animatronic puppet, costing around $1 million. The goal was to make him feel real, with weight, movement, and presence that could not be matched by early digital effects. On paper, it sounded like a bold and exciting decision. In practice, it became one of the film's biggest challenges. The puppet itself was massive and complex. It required a team of 16 puppeteers working together just to control basic movements. Every arm, every turn, every small action had to be timed carefully. If one part failed, the entire motion would fall apart. Coordinating that level of detail slowed production down, as scenes had to be repeated until everything worked in sync. What looked smooth on screen often took many attempts to achieve. The biggest issue, however, was reliability. The system broke down often, with parts freezing or failing during filming. Delays became common, and frustration grew as time was lost fixing problems. In the end, many of Goro's scenes were reduced during editing. What was meant to be a major highlight became limited, showing how ambition can sometimes outpace what technology can handle. 3. The producer who fought for the movie. Lawrence Kasanoff identified something that others failed to see before it became widely accepted. He viewed Mortal Kombat, 1995, as more than just another video game movie adaptation. His vision for the film involved creating a major blockbuster with mass market appeal through its combination of action scenes, fantasy elements, and established characters. He pursued his vision despite facing difficult times because he recognized the possibilities behind his concept. Movie studios operated with strict risk management policies during that time period. The executives of the studio considered video game adaptations to be unreliable after previous attempts at making those films had failed. Executives understood that financing another project would lead to the same outcome as previous efforts. The project suffered from continuous dismissal since meetings lacked confidence, and people needed to hear complete project details before making decisions. 2. Sonya Blade was cast twice. The role of Sonya Blade did not follow a smooth path. At first, Bridget Wilson was chosen for the part, but scheduling conflicts forced her to step away. Production delays meant she could not commit at the time, and the role slipped out of her hands. For many actors, that would have been the end of the story. The film moved forward, and the search for a replacement began. The studio then turned to Cameron Diaz, who was gaining attention and seemed like a strong fit. She began preparing for the role, including training for the physical demands of the character. However, just weeks before filming, an unexpected injury changed everything. Diaz fractured her wrist, making it impossible for her to perform the action-heavy scenes required. With production already underway, the team had to act quickly to avoid delays. That is when Bridget Wilson returned. With very little time to prepare, she stepped back into the role she had once lost. There was no long training period or extended rehearsal. She had to learn choreography on the spot, often between takes, while keeping up with the pace of filming. Despite the pressure, she delivered a performance that matched the intensity of the film, turning a second chance into a defining moment. And now the last fact in the list: one actor walked into the room and ended the debate instantly. 1. Shang Tsung won the role instantly. The audition process contains some silent auditions, which function as regular auditions. The Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa entrance enabled him to take control of his environment. He delivered the text to the audience through his performance. He arrived in full costume, fully committed to the character before saying a single line. The moment he stepped in, the tone shifted. The audition space no longer functioned as an audition space. The performance had started before the audience could see it. He created a new space that positioned him higher than the producers. He climbed onto a chair, placing himself above everyone in the room, creating a sense of power and presence that matched the character. He spoke his lines with complete freedom. His voice projected self-assuredness while maintaining complete control over the space. The actor spoke every word with purpose because he prepared himself to perform on set instead of auditioning in the casting room. Mortal Kombat survived sickness, injuries, politics, broken puppets, risky casting, and a Hollywood industry that expected it to fail. Yet somehow, it became the video game movie that fans never forgot. If you enjoyed these weird facts, like the video, comment your favorite Mortal Kombat fighter, subscribe for more, and watch the next video shown on the screen for another deep dive into movie history.